From Lex Luger, whose bodybuilding pivot disappeared when Vince McMahon's WBF promotion collapsed, to Zac Efron, whose 1,000-calorie-a-day Baywatch physique caused severe insomnia and depression. These stars pushed themselves to extremes. But watch out for the Ultimate Warrior, who pursued competitive bodybuilding before realizing he lacked the genetics for Mr. Olympia and abandoning it entirely. Before he was Ultimate Warrior, screaming into cameras and running to the ring like the rope was on fire, Jim Hellwig was just a bodybuilder trying to make it on a stage. That's the part of his story that gets buried under the face paint and the tassels. He didn't fall into bodybuilding after wrestling made him famous. It was the other way around. Bodybuilding came first, and it's where he actually failed before he found the thing he'd be remembered for. After a career in bodybuilding, Warrior turned to professional wrestling. And from 1985 to 1986, he was paired with fellow former bodybuilder Steve Borden, later known as Sting, as the Blade Runners. That pairing is well known to wrestling fans. What's less talked about is what came right before it, the actual competition that ended his bodybuilding ambitions for good. His last bodybuilding contest was 1985's Junior USA's, which was won by future IFBB pro Ron Love, and Warrior finished fifth. Fifth place, not last, not embarrassing on paper, but nowhere near a title, and nowhere near what he needed to make bodybuilding an actual career. In a sport where placement is everything, where fifth means you're a name nobody remembers by the next show, that finish was the ceiling. There was no follow-up run, no redemption competition, no next Junior USA's where he came back and settled the score with Ron Love. The story just stops there. And here's the detail that makes it land harder. In 1985, after spending 6 weeks in California training for a bodybuilding contest, he was invited to join a group of bodybuilders, Garland Denoho, Mark Miller, and Steve Borden, to form a professional wrestling team. And Warrior accepted the invitation and abandoned his bodybuilding career, as well as his plans to become a chiropractor. Read that again. He didn't just have a backup plan in wrestling. He had a whole other backup plan in chiropractic school. Bodybuilding was supposed to be the main event of his life, and instead it became the thing he walked away from twice over, once from the stage, once from the classroom, the moment a better opportunity showed up. That's what a completed failure in bodybuilding actually looks like for someone who goes on to become famous somewhere else. It's not a viral flop or a public humiliation. It's 6 weeks of brutal training, a fifth-place finish, and then quietly packing it in because the numbers on the judges' scorecards told him this wasn't going to be his path. Warrior, then going to Hellwig, began his professional wrestling career as Jim Justice Hellwig of Power Team USA, the group of bodybuilders trained by Red Bastian and Rick Bassman. Notice even his entry into wrestling was framed around bodybuilding. Power Team USA was a bodybuilder's stunt show before it was a wrestling factory. He couldn't fully escape the sport even while abandoning it. It just repackaged him into something else. What makes this such a clean example for our list is that there's no ambiguity. He didn't get injured before the show like some cases we'll get to. He didn't get caught up in a promotion collapsing around him. He trained, he competed, he placed fifth, and it wasn't good enough to build a life on. The sport told him no in the most direct way a sport can, with a number next to his name that wasn't good enough to be remembered. It's worth sitting with how different Ultimate Warrior's public image became compared to that origin story. Fans who grew up watching him sprint to the ring, shaking the ropes, screaming promos that barely made grammatical sense, had no reason to know that the man underneath, the paint, had once measured his entire self-worth against a bodybuilding scorecard and lost. Wrestling gave him a stage where his physique alone, without a judge's clipboard attached to it, was enough to make him a legend. Bodybuilding, a sport that scores physiques directly and mercilessly, had already told him it wasn't enough. There's an irony buried in that. The very same body, cut, veined, built for maximum visual impact, that couldn't get him past fifth place at the Junior USA's, became one of the most iconic physiques in wrestling history within just a couple of years. Same muscle, same training background, completely different outcome because the venue changed. Bodybuilding judges wanted something specific: symmetry, conditioning, posing precision, comparisons against guys who'd go on to become IFBB pros. Wrestling crowds wanted intensity, motion, a look that photographed well from the cheap seats. He had the second thing, he didn't have enough of the first. So when we ask who tried to become a bodybuilder and completely failed, Ultimate Warrior, is maybe the purest version of the answer, because he's the only name on this list who actually failed inside the sport itself, on an actual competition stage against real bodybuilders, before he was ever famous for anything else. Everyone else on this list either had the sport collapse around them or hit a wall trying to chase a bodybuilder's physique for a totally different job. He's the one who just lost. And instead of training harder for a rematch, he picked up a different sport entirely and became a completely different kind of star. That's failure number 1. Now let's get to a case where an entire promotion, not just one guy, collapsed before the bodybuilding career could even start. If Ultimate Warrior's story is about one man losing a competition, Lex Luger's story is about an entire bodybuilding league falling apart before he ever got the chance to compete in one. Vince McMahon didn't just want wrestlers who looked like bodybuilders. At the start of the 1990s, he wanted an actual second company built entirely around competitive bodybuilding, and he handed Luger a starring role in it. In 1991, Vince McMahon founded the World Bodybuilding Federation as a subsidiary of Titan Sports, aiming to create a drug-tested professional bodybuilding league that emphasized aesthetics and entertainment over the dominant International Federation of Bodybuilding and Fitness. And the WBF positioned itself as a fresh alternative, recruiting high-profile athletes and wrestlers to draw crossover appeal, with events broadcast on pay-per-view and television to capitalize on WWF's media infrastructure. Luger was central to that plan. Fresh from departing WCW after losing the WCW World Heavyweight Championship to Sting at Super Brawl II in February 1992, Luger was recruited by McMahon as a flagship competitor for the WBF, highlighting his muscular physique honed during years in professional wrestling. And billed at around 275 pounds, Luger underwent intensive training to prepare for bodybuilding competition. Here's the twist that makes this a genuine failure rather than just a career pivot. Luger didn't leave WCW to go wrestle for McMahon right away. A decorated champion for the NWA and Jim Crockett Promotions, WCW World Heavyweight Champion Lex Luger worked to get his release from WCW in early 1992, with a view of joining Vince McMahon in Connecticut. And after dropping the championship to Sting, Luger got his release, but he was not moving north to wrestle, but rather to be part of McMahon's new venture, a bodybuilding promotion, the WBF. This wasn't a side project, this was the plan. Give up the wrestling world title, walk away from WCW, and go be a bodybuilder full-time. Then physics intervened. Luger suffered an unfortunate injury in a motorcycle crash, and by the time he was ready to return, the WBF had already closed its doors, making huge losses and going out of business. Think about the timing. He gave up an actual world championship to chase this. He trained his body specifically for competitive bodybuilding at nearly 275 pounds. And before he ever got to step on a WBF stage and actually compete, a motorcycle accident took him out, and by the time his arm healed, there was no league left to compete in. Lex Luger suffered a motorcycle accident that injured his arm, rendering him out of the competition. And famous bodybuilder Lou Ferrigno signed with the IFBB instead of McMahon's WBF, a blow that accelerated the WBF's downward spiral. So it wasn't just Luger's injury. The whole operation was hemorrhaging credibility at the same time. McMahon's dream of a rival to the IFBB was losing the exact kind of star power, the Ferrignos of the world, that would have made it legitimate. Instead of competing, Luger became something else entirely. The total package instead became a co-host for a short-lived television show called WBF Bodystars, along with Vince McMahon and actress Cameo Newer, a show that aimed to feature its Bodystars, promote the ICOPRO supplement line, and launch a lifestyle fitness brand, an ambitious vision that didn't pan out in the end. He didn't fail as a competitor, he never got to compete at all. He failed as a bodybuilder before the sport even gave him the chance to step under the lights, because the company built to give him that chance ran out of money and credibility first. Luger was badly injured in a June 1992 motorcycle accident and was unable to appear for the WBF, which folded shortly after anyway. The order of events there says everything. He gets hurt, the WBF folds regardless. Both things happen so close together that it's almost impossible to say which one killed his bodybuilding career first, his own body, or the business built to showcase it. Either way, the outcome's identical. 0 competitions, 0 titles, a full world championship given up for nothing. Lex Luger, born June 2, 1958, is remembered today as a retired professional wrestler, former football player, and bodybuilder renowned for his imposing physique and signature submission hold, the torture rack. But that bodybuilder label in his own biography is doing a lot of quiet work. He never won a bodybuilding title. He never placed at a bodybuilding show. The label survives purely because of what the physique looked like, not because of what it accomplished on a competitive stage. What happened to the WBF as a whole tells you why Luger never got a second shot. The WBF failed so badly largely because of its close connection to professional wrestling. Wrestling fans didn't care about bodybuilding, and bodybuilding fans didn't care about wrestling. And its wishy-washy stance on steroid testing didn't help matters either. There wasn't going to be a WBF Season 2 for Luger to return to once his arm healed. 1 month after their disastrous and final pay-per-view, the WBF ceased operations after publishing the last edition of its magazine. The door didn't just close on Luger, it got demolished behind him. And when he did finally return to full-time wrestling in 1993, the bodybuilder's instincts he'd sharpened during that whole detour didn't necessarily translate well either. Dutch Mantel, a wrestling veteran who worked alongside him, put it bluntly years later, recalling how Lex was horrible. He was too busy posing and flexing in the ring. The exact habits that would have served him on a bodybuilding stage working against him once he got back to wrestling. It's almost poetic. The body built for a competition he never got to enter ended up being criticized in the sport he actually returned to. So that's failure number 2, not a man losing a competition, but a man who never even got the chance to lose one, because the entire promotion built around him collapsed first. Now let's move away from wrestling completely, into Hollywood, where the failure looks less like a scoreboard and more like a body breaking down from the inside. Zac Efron didn't step onto a bodybuilding stage. But what he chased for Baywatch in 2016 was, by his own description, a bodybuilder's level of conditioning, stripped of body fat, veined, stage-ready. And it's a physique he's since said was never actually meant to be lived in. That's its own kind of failure, building something that looks like a finished bodybuilder's peak week, and discovering the body simply can't hold that shape. Zac Efron put his body through hell to achieve the chiseled look he had in the 2017 film Baywatch. And while the result may have been aesthetically pleasing, it's a process he never wants to revisit again. That's not a throwaway comment from a press junket. That's a direct statement that the thing he built wasn't something worth building again, no matter how good it looked on a poster. The mechanics of what he actually did to get their line up almost exactly with what competitive bodybuilders do in the final weeks before a show. Part of his training regimen required powerful diuretics, colloquially known as water pills, to help the body shed excess water and sodium. And Efron himself admitted, that Baywatch look, I don't know if that's really attainable. There's just too little water in the skin. Like it's fake, it looks CG'd. Diuretics right before a shoot is peak week bodybuilding strategy, pulling water out from under the skin to expose every striation of muscle. Bodybuilders do it for 1 day on a stage, then rehydrate. Efron was being asked to hold that look for filming, for weeks, not for a single afternoon under stage lights. The daily routine matched the extremity of the goal. In preparation for the movie, Efron said he was taking diuretics, overtraining, and eating the same 3 meals every day, waking up at 4 a.m. to work out regardless of how late shooting went the night before. No rest days factored around a filming schedule, no flexibility, just a grinding repetition that treated an acting job like a competition prep cycle. Except there was no single show date to peak for. The cameras were rolling for months. The consequences showed up almost exactly the way overtrained physique athletes described them. The actor revealed that the training regimen was so intense, he ultimately developed a bout with depression and insomnia. In his own words, I started to develop insomnia, and I fell into a pretty bad depression for a long time. Something about that experience burned me out. I had a really hard time recentering. That's not a minor complaint about a tough shoot. That's a description of a body and mind that broke down from the demands of chasing a look that wasn't sustainable. The exact word he later used to describe the whole thing. And it wasn't a quick recovery either. According to Men's Health, it wasn't until 6 months after filming Wrapped that he finally started to feel like himself again. 6 months, that's longer than most competitive bodybuilders take to recover between a peak week diet and returning to a normal off-season eating pattern. And Efron wasn't even competing, he was making a studio comedy. What's telling is what he did once he had full control over his own body again, away from a studio contract. During the pandemic, he said, At one point, that was a dream of mine, what it would be like to not have to be in shape all the time. So I tried it and I was successful. And for all the reasons I thought it would be incredible, I was just miserable. My body would not feel healthy, I just didn't feel alive. I felt bogged down and slow. So even swinging to the opposite extreme, total relaxation, didn't work for him either. It's as if the Baywatch process broke something about his relationship with his own body that a simple pendulum swing couldn't fix. Years later, reflecting on the whole ordeal, he was even more direct about the core problem. The shape I was in for Baywatch wasn't sustainable, he said, emphasizing the importance of balancing professional success with personal happiness and calling for more realistic standards for men. That's the whole verdict in one sentence, coming straight from the person who lived it. Sustainability is the entire foundation of real bodybuilding. You build a physique in phases. You diet down for a show, then you rebuild. What Efron chased for Baywatch skipped every phase and just tried to live permanently at the leanest, most vein-popping stage. And his own body eventually forced the correction through insomnia and depression, rather than through any conscious decision of his own. He's since put himself through other transformations, including a dramatic physical change to play Kevin Von Erich in The Iron Claw, but has been explicit that he didn't ever want to be in shape the way he was for Baywatch again. The lesson stuck. He kept building muscle for roles, but the specific extreme conditioning of Baywatch became a line he refused to cross again. Because the first attempt to hold that level indefinitely had cost him half a year of his life just to recover from. So that's the third kind of failure on this list. Not a scoreboard loss, not a company collapsing, but a body simply refusing to sustain the shape it was pushed into, and a mind that paid the price for the attempt. Now for the strangest entry of all, a case that happened just days ago, and involves someone who deliberately tried to see how far a bodybuilding competition could be gamed. While Ultimate Warrior, Lex Luger, and Zac Efron all failed while genuinely trying to build something real. This last case flips the whole premise on its head. Someone who tried to become a bodybuilder while deliberately sabotaging the attempt, just to see what would happen on stage. Peter Mossfield, who runs the Boozebag Fitness Instagram account, ran his own bodybuilding experiment that focused on entering a bodybuilding competition without doing any workouts. Not a slow fade into laziness, a deliberate planned stunt. Take the drugs bodybuilders use to build muscle, skip the actual muscle building, and see if a competition stage can be tricked. His entire approach to this leaned into the exact excesses that get bodybuilders in trouble, and did it on purpose. His routine was to take steroids, drink lots of alcohol, and not work out, and after destroying his body with the alcohol and the steroids, while still losing some fat, he decided to enter a bodybuilding competition anyway. That's the setup, chemical enhancement, without any of the training that's supposed to justify it, treating a real competitive stage like a prop for an experiment. The drinking wasn't a light touch either. At his height, he was consuming up to 24 drinks per day. 24 drinks a day, heading into a show where competitors are typically dieting down to single-digit body fat percentages through months of disciplined training. It's about as far from a legitimate bodybuilding prep as it's possible to get while still showing up backstage with a competitor's number pinned to your posing trunks. The competition itself was real, with real judges and real competitors. He finally entered the men's Classic Physique Open Class B competition, held in New York on August 8. This wasn't a mock event set up for content. It was an actual sanctioned show, with actual bodybuilders who had actually trained, standing next to a man who hadn't touched a weight in preparation for it. And true to the premise, the night got away from him before it even properly started. Mossfield allegedly left the event after prejudging to go drinking, and as he put it, kinda lost track of time. He didn't even stay for his own competition. The stunt about not training bled directly into a stunt about not even showing up for the rest of the show. The result was about as clean a failure as you can get in a scored competition. He eventually came in last place. Dead last in a field of competitors who'd spent months doing exactly what he'd refused to do. Yep, the guy got dead last. There's no ambiguity in that outcome. No motorcycle accident to blame. No promotion collapsing around him. Just a straightforward finish at the bottom of the scoreboard. The direct and predictable result of skipping every part of the sport that actually matters. What makes it worth including here isn't just the finish. It's the reaction from people who actually understand the sport. Bodybuilding site Generation Iron dove deeper into Mossfield's experiment, reporting that he was drinking 24 beers a day before switching to vodka leading up to the competition, and expressed concern that the use of steroids can be dangerous without proper medical supervision. Even within the bodybuilding community, the reaction wasn't laughter at the last place finish. It was concern about a person putting real drugs into a body that wasn't being monitored by anyone qualified to do so. It's a strange bookend to put next to Ultimate Warrior's 5th place finish decades earlier. Warrior trained for 6 weeks and still fell short of a title. Mossfield trained for 0 weeks, took the same category of substances competitive bodybuilders use, and finished behind every single person who did the work. Both are technically failures to become a bodybuilder, but one is a story about falling short despite genuine effort, and the other is a story about what happens when the effort is removed entirely and the stunt becomes the whole point. Put all 4 of these together and a pattern starts to form. Ultimate Warrior lost on the judges' scorecards and picked up wrestling instead. Lex Luger gave up a world title to chase a bodybuilding career that got wiped out before he ever competed, when the whole company collapsed around him. Zac Efron built the most photographed physique of his career and then spent 6 months recovering from what it cost him, eventually calling the whole look unsustainable in his own words. And Peter Mossfield turned the entire premise into a joke, took the shortcuts bodybuilders are warned against, and finished exactly where you'd expect, last. None of them walked away from these attempts with a bodybuilding trophy. Warrior left the sport behind entirely for wrestling. Luger left it behind because there was nothing left of the company to return to. Efron rebuilt his relationship with fitness around sustainability instead of extremes. And Mossfield's entire point was proving that the shortcut doesn't work, and then living out exactly that proof on a real stage, in front of real judges, in last place. 4 very different routes into the same conclusion. Bodybuilding as a competitive sport doesn't bend for fame, timing, or shortcuts. It just scores what's actually standing on the stage.